Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Court-Martail Podcast. Introducing your host for this evening first. He is the host with the most from the West Coast, the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg. And his partner, he has colonized, energized, and revolutionized the podcasting wrestling world today. Your Colonial champion, Sean McCarty. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, once again to another extraordinary edition of the Court-Martail Podcast, the only place where you're going to find a tri-corner hat from the 18th century as the logo, which has nothing to do with the content at hand. I am your Colonial champion, Sean McCarty, mixing it up, shitting on his own show, and the only way that you're going to know just how much I'm dumping on it is to like, share, subscribe, and hit that bell button to all so you get every notification all the time. And I don't mean to knock us all down because there's somebody here to join me who's going to build us right back up. The man of the hour, the man with the power, too sweet to be sour. He is the Bay Area Brawler himself, Mr. Skylar Greenberg. Welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
I don't get paid enough to fix this show.
I never said fix it. I said lift it up. There's no fixing this show. But considering the numbers we're pulling right now, it's not like much is broken.
Fair enough. And those numbers will continue to grow, but only if you like, share, and subscribe to the Court-Martail Podcast.
That's right.
As we have a couple of interesting topics to get into.
Yeah, we got a lot to discuss. We've got a very interesting spotlight. We've got we have a match of the week. And we have a very long topic. But before we get to any of that, we got to do what we always do to kick off this show. Roll that intro, baby. Coming straight to you from the Golden Gate Garage, this is the Wrestle News with Skylar Green.
That is right, folks. It is the news of the week with the Bay Area Brawler, Skylar Greenberg, at your service. And Sean, are you ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
Well, we're going to begin by having you go to your bathroom, go to your medicine cabinet, and lock it so that way Tony Khan cannot get the Adderall.
Have we finally gotten confirmation that Tony Khan is on some sort of amplifier?
We don't know if he is or if he isn't, but all I can say is, boy, is he crazy.
Well, let's hear it. What do you got?
So, Tony Khan was doing his usual press conference, the week of a big pay-per-view.
Yep.
And this happened on November 11th. 2021. And what was happening during this press conference is that he was getting a series of questions, right?
Yeah.
And everything was going smoothly, right? Everything was going smoothly, even if Tony Khan is kind of, when it comes to press conferences.
Yeah, he's not the greatest with the public.
Right. Until Ella J of SES Scoops begins to ask him a question about women. Now, let me give a little bit of context about this question, okay?
Sure, context matters.
So, in August, NWA ran an all-women's event called Empower.
Yes.
And Impact also ran an all-women's event called Knockouts Knockdown in October.
That I didn't know because they must have done a really poor job of advertising it.
Probably. Also, it's Impact.
It is
and
Impact.
Then also, as we did in last week's... 2 weeks ago's match of the week, we talked about Evolution, the WWE All-Women's pay-per-view.
Yes.
Now, for context for NWA specifically and Empower in August, Tony Khan sent 3 of his contractually obligated women to compete on that show. Diamante, Layla Hirsch, and Red Velvet. And if you want to add Kiera Hogan too, that's a 4th wrestler that Tony had participate in the event, right?
That was for the Impact one?
That was for the NWA show. Empower
for the Okay. All right, I'm with you.
So Ella J, in referencing these 2 particular all-women shows, begins to ask Tony Khan a question in the press conference that happened on November 11th.
Mm-hmm.
She begins with, The bar, I think, has really been raised this year with a lot of all-women shows and main events taking place. But does AEW have any plans or hopes to contribute maybe an all-women's event of their own sometime? And at this point, Ella J gets interrupted by Tony Khan, who begins to go on this rant that is very defensive. Let me go ahead and read the paragraph, okay?
Yeah, please do.
I'm going to cut off your question right there because I don't think I get enough credit for what I did for the NWA show. Because a good number of the people who wrestled on the NWA show were wrestlers I sent and paid. So do I think I contributed because the highest paid wrestlers on that show were actually people I paid separately for what they already make in AEW to go wrestle on that show? And I don't think they did a very good job of telling people that. Honestly, even though it was in the deal we did, I wish they would have told more people that because it was one of the points I made when we closed it. Was I think it would be nice if you told people that I'm paying the wrestlers coming because it is a big contribution for me. So I did pay for the wrestlers for that show. It's kind of like when you pay for dinner and nobody thanks you.
It's not all about you, Tony Khan. I mean, that wasn't even remotely close to what she was even asking. That's more just like that's more like the kid who like is trying to help clean at his house and he like throws a paper towel in the garbage and then he's like trying to say, look how great did you see me throw away the paper towel? Yeah, I done got it, all right? You know, did it for you. But it's just, that's not the point. None of that was the point. What was the point of that rant?
Do you want to be honest about it?
Except for just patting ego and just stroking and fluffing his member down there at the thought of helping other promotions succeed. But here's the problem I have with this because I know that you're ready to go off on him. Here's my thing.
Well, I have more to go, shall we?
Oh, I thought we were finished. Of course we're not. All right, continue.
So Tony Khan follows this up later, hyping up Ruby Soho and Thunder Rosa and the TBS Championship Tournament. By the way, you know that they're doing that, right?
Yeah, for the hose belt.
For the hose belt. So I have been and am trying to actively make big strides in women's wrestling. And as far as a lot of stuff that has been happening in all women's shows that have been happening in other places, I actually have made great contributions, including financial contributions, which I think they could have done a better job of telling people about, honestly.
Yeah, you're the best, Tony. Look how much money you have. Nobody gives a shit how much money you give and how many financial contributions. If you're trying to give money to help people, you don't expect somebody to acknowledge the fact that you've donated money to help people. Because then that says that your only reason you're donating is to make yourself look good. And that's kind of my whole problem with this whole thing that he's saying here. Because it's like, it doesn't matter. He's basically using the women, what he gave to the NWA and Impact more of like a front of like, look how progressive I am by giving these women. Oh, you didn't acknowledge me? Well, then maybe I shouldn't contribute to women. Look how much I'm doing. No, Tony, you're not really doing a whole lot of anything. And financial contributions are not going to be enough. It's not going to make you any more endearing of a business owner.
That's a very, very good point. Now may I make my point?
Yes, by all means, the floor is yours. Rant away, sir.
And I'm going to do this real quiet-like. I'm going to build to it.
Okay. Start low and get angry.
Tony Khan, what you basically just did in this press conference is you just cut off a woman so you could mansplain why you're doing something great. And I know, mansplaining is such a bad. Let me even take that further, shall we? You cut off a reporter so you could answer something that you weren't even asked. Really, what you were doing is you were trying to make yourself look good. Yes, I and my money that my dad gave me and helping women. And look at what I did for this company. And you should all be grateful for the things I'm doing because I have all this money and I really am making something happen. Sean, let me ask you a question.
Shoot.
The women that he sent to the NWA show, right?
Yep.
Diamante, Layla Hirsch, and Red Velvet. Are any of them stars?
The only one, is anyone on AEW is women's division a true star whose name isn't Britt Baker. No disrespect to Thunder Rosa, because she's awesome.
But that's the whole point I was trying to make, and thank you, Sean, for mentioning it. Because what the hell have you done with your women's division that is worthy of praise and recognition? The answer is nothing. No one on that AEW women's division roster means a damn except for Britt Baker, and she is the only woman that legitimately has gotten any sort of push, any sort of promo time, any sort of storylines that are halfway decent. She's the only woman that you've actually cared about. Every other woman on that show is cannon fodder for you and your company. Clearly you don't care. Clearly the people you put in charge of the division, one Mr. Kenny Omega, don't care. All you care about is pandering to these AEW fans and saying, oh, we're progressive. We're going to have women take opportunities. We're going to pay them equally. Do you know how many matches regularly get on AEW shows for women?
Sometimes one.
Only one.
Yeah.
Name me a pay-per-view that had 2 women's matches on it that did not involve the pre-show.
Yeah, if you're not counting the pre-show, the buy-in, if you want to be technical, no, I can't think of anything. And just kind of a side note before you continue, Britt Baker got over on her own. And then Tony Khan pushed her. It's not like he had any involvement in her getting over, because at first she was the drizzling shits until she finally figured some shit out.
But the answer for that is that Britt Baker got good because she got promo time. Even when she was injured, she got the chance to cut promos.
Yep.
She got her own show. She got her own valet to be behind her.
Yep.
Well, actually, now she has 2 valets. That's even better. Now Britt Baker is good because she got all that time to develop. But you have not given any other woman the opportunity to develop. Green as shit as hell wrestlers are all you have. And you just stick them on Dark. You stick them on Elevation. You stick them on these shows that don't mean anything just so they can get match times, but not even promo times. I can't tell you anyone's character that's a female on that show besides Britt Baker because they haven't given the opportunity to anyone else. You can't even... When's the last time Thunder Rosa got a promo? Or Serena Deeb?
Well, I think Serena Deeb is injured, but I cannot remember for the life of me the last time I saw Thunder Rosa. And then
right,
also,
all you get are these embarrassing women like Maki Ito show up, or Ryo Kazamane, whoever the hell wrestled against Hikaru Shida.
Oh, that was terrible.
And Hikaru Shida doesn't even get any promotion. Riho barely gets any promotion.
Yeah, well, that one I'm not as upset about it, but Hikaru Shida should, considering that she was the women's champion for what, like 260 days? Something like that?
But think about this. Your 3 former women's champions, Riho, Hikaru Shida, and Nyla Rose, they get no promotion whatsoever.
Yep. And just as as a side note, think about who their 3 women's champions are. Riho, Hikaru Shida, and Nyla Rose. Just let that sit in for a second.
And you can argue, I mean, Riho obviously doesn't deserve it. Nyla, yes, but it was too early for her. Hikaru Shida, sure, but her reign could have been more if they gave more.
Yeah. If they had built her more, her title reign would have meant more.
For Tony Khan to come out here and stroke his big dick about all his money and all he's done for women's wrestling, Tony Khan, you have done shit. As much as WWE is annoying with their women's division, and we will get to them later.
Yes, we will.
At least they have 2 matches, women's matches on each pay-per-view. At least they put effort into giving some of their women's stars over. You have not gotten a single women's star over, not named Britt Baker. You can fuck off with your opinions about women's wrestling because you clearly suck at it. The people you hire, like Kenny Omega, to run your women's division suck at it. And you clearly don't care about women's wrestling at all.
I can't disagree with anything that you just said. I mean, you could tell just from the dialogue that he used, because he went straight to, I'm going to cut you off, and I did this, and I did that, and I did this for women's wrestling. He didn't mention any women's wrestlers in that entire dialogue. Was there a single name, a female wrestler's name in that entire rant that he gave?
No.
No, because it's all about Tony Khan. And Tony Khan is all about Tony Khan. The entire AEW show is based around Tony Khan. How many times do you hear Tony Khan's name on a regular AEW show? Genuinely.
I don't watch AEW, so I can't tell you, but I assume it's more than once.
It's got to be more than once because I hear every pay-per-view that I've ever watched of AEW's, which, by the way, just a side note, we are going to be watching. We will be watching Full Gear. We will be reviewing it next week, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be it's something, and it's just... But every time I hear a pay-per-view, I hear Tony Khan's name 3 or 4 times. It's not AEW, it's the Tony Khan show, and Tony Khan is the one who's the biggest fan of the Tony Khan show.
Right. Now, as for what happened after the media call, Tony Khan apparently did apologize, I'm putting that in quotation marks, to Ella J. And Ella on Twitter did thank people and mentioned it. But honestly, it's like any other apology that Tony Khan's ever given for any type of thing that he's ever said that was controversial. Because he says something controversial, people get mad at him, he apologizes, and he tries to move on.
And it changes nothing. It's, this is, it just kind of seems like Tony, at some point, Tony is going to have to recognize that he is not the star of the show. Even though he's the one running things, he's not as important as he thinks he is in the grand scheme of what AEW is all about. Because Tony Khan could have been running that show, but if he never got CM Punk, if he never got Danielson or any of these big names that got a whole bunch of goofs like the first year and change of AEW, nobody would give a shit about Tony Khan. And he's lucky that he has Jacksonville Jaguars money that he could spend frivolously at the drop of a hat. And, it takes a lot to make Urban Meyer look more progressive than Tony Khan. But that's exactly what's happening with this kind of conference call.
And honestly, I cannot, for the life of me, support AEW. No matter how much I try, no matter how much Joshua prods me into trying to like AEW, I cannot do it because Tony Khan's in charge. And as long as Tony Khan's in charge, we're going to get stupid shit like this.
Well, you could make the same argument for WWE. It's just a different kind of stupid shit. But at the very least, Vince McMahon knows how to talk to a press conference.
Well, more than that, though, Vince McMahon doesn't do press conferences anymore because he knows that he's rough up. But more importantly,
true.
WWE...
That's actually a really good point. Because he would say stupid shit now if he was.
But the other thing, too, with WWE is that we know they're bad, but they're honest about it. Like, they're not trying to hide it. Tony Khan... The thing with Tony Khan that gets me off is that he tries to present himself as being progressive. And instead, we get all this privileged shit coming out of his mouth. Tony Khan didn't have a silver spoon in his mouth when he grew up. He had a golden spoon because he talks about how great he is and how much money he has because his daddy gave it to him.
And I don't really have much of an answer for this. It seems like this was always going to be his attitude, just given, like you said, given his upbringing. It's no surprise that this is his attitude 2 years in, but the ego on this guy has skyrocketed in that 2 years' time. Just from still being around after 2 years has seemed to have inflated this man's ego to the point where he thinks he's Stephanie McMahon and that he's invented women's wrestling.
Exactly. And here's the thing. We're going to watch Full Gear. We're going to see the artificially created TBS Championship Tournament thing. We're going to see all the other shows. And we're going to review it. But I'm not going to review it and give Tony Khan a pass for anything that's good on that show. I'm not going to give him a pass for anything that's bad. I'm just going to watch this show. I'm going to see whether or not I enjoy it. And if I enjoy it, I enjoy it. If I don't, I don't. But I'm not going to be thanking Tony Khan for it.
Yeah, well... I never thank Vince McMahon for any good that WWE puts together either. I think that at this point, the two of us have kind of recognized and come to this reckoning that we're going to get what we get from the people who run these companies. And it's hardly good, but when we do get the success of the wrestling itself, it's not them that are the reason. It's usually the talent that make it what it is.
By the way, hold on. You say that. But in the notes review I did of the Royal Rumble 2021, I did thank Vince McMahon 5 times, in fact.
You did.
And you and Joshua hated me for it.
We were a little less than pleased, but at the same time, realistically speaking, how much Vince McMahon has actually had to do with any of this? I mean, seriously, can you really thank Vince McMahon for Roman Reigns' heel turn, or do you really have to see how Roman Reigns came into his own on his own?
That and Michael PSAs, because that's the road agent that was working with Roman Reigns.
Right. Exactly. So, just all in all, I think that Tony Khan thinks he's a bigger deal than he really is. He's a lot smaller cog in the AEW machine than he would give himself credit for.
Right. Now, let's go ahead and move on to something else and not have my blood pressure go up.
Yeah, we're
high.
still pretty early into this show.
We're going to talk about a quick wrestler, well, 2 wrestlers getting married.
All right.
Because look at this picture. Look at the bride-to-be.
Well, the bride that is now.
RVD and Katie Forbes tied the knot.
Congratulations, Rob. I never thought that Rob would actually be well, this is a remarriage, I suppose. But still, congratulations, you two. Both ACPW contracted talent. Very happy for them, even though I've got Katie doing something else, which is arguably better than anything she ever did with Van Dam. And I'm sure that their nuptials were great.
In Vegas, by the way, because of course it has to be Vegas.
Well, why wouldn't it be? That's where all of Katie's co-workers live.
But also, I think it's good for Rob Van Dam too. He's talked about how he struggled with injuries and mental health issues, and that he really has felt better now that he has Katie Forbes in his life, and I can't be mad at that.
No. It is a genuine congratulations. As hysterical as it is a genuine congratulations from the two of us. From all of us at the Court-Martail podcast.
Yes. Now, we'll see what happens. Anyways, we're going to move on to WWE, and we're going to move on to a certain content creator issue.
Okay.
Now, I'm sure you are familiar with Xavier Woods' gaming channel, Up, Up, Down, Down.
I am.
And they have not been making content for the last few weeks. They've actually been noticeably absent from their content making.
Okay.
Apparently, the reason why is that Up, Up, Down, Down is protesting the fact that WWE doesn't give that much money to Xavier Woods for the content that Up, Up, Down, Down creates.
Well, that's actually really interesting. Because you would have imagined that when WWE did that whole third-party revocation, what was that? Was that the beginning of this year? Or last year?
That was, I believe, either the end of last year or the beginning of this year.
Yeah, right around that time. You would have thought that Up, Up, Down, Down would have been hit by that. And that WWE would have rather been like, no, we'll take a little bit of your YouTube earnings. And who's to say that they're not? But I find this very interesting because they still promote Up, Up, Down, Down fairly regularly. I actually, just this morning, I saw that they're doing a big tournament. I saw a post from them that's hosted by Xavier Woods and Golden Boy, who was on AEW programming when they first launched. So have we seen a defection to the other side in the form of the most charismatic wrestling announcer that they had in 2019 in Golden Boy?
Or is it WWE playing with Xavier Woods? Because it's not on Xavier Woods' Up, Up, Down, Down channel, which you would think it would be because it's a video game-related thing. It's on WWE's main YouTube channel.
Interesting. So it makes you wonder if maybe they're just going to end up canning Up the channel itself out of all of this.
Right. And Xavier Woods has been adamant about the fact that he wants to be able to do wrestling because he loves wrestling, but he's also planning for his career post-wrestling, and video games are what's for him because he's also passionate about video games. And
he's got a hell of a following.
He's got a hell of a following. He even got a gig on a G4 channel. I I don't know. Have you seen the G4 channel?
I have not.
But basically, he's working as a host on the G4 channel, which is a big video gaming channel.
That's awesome.
And again, it's a guy who clearly has his ducks in the row, if you will, about what he's going to do after his wrestling career is over. But the thing about it is that he's doing this content creation for WWE, and Up, Down, Down, whether you like it or not, it's one of the very few things that WWE does that's not manufactured, and you actually kind of feel the personality of the wrestlers that are on it.
And that might also be part of WWE's overlying issue with it. In the fact that they cannot actually death grip it and just squeeze all of the life out of it in order for them to make an extra coin or two from YouTube's base. But, you know, I think a part of this as well is that WWE doesn't ever like when somebody gets over or does things on their own and is successful doing it. For 20 years, they have hated that. All the time. They have hated it. And Xavier Woods, you know, he wasn't going to stop doing the Battle of the Brands once Tyler Breeze got released. He had Omega and the Bucks on the channel at one point. You know, this is something where Xavier Woods was not afraid to reach out to other people outside of the sphere, and I'm sure that Xavier Woods was probably going to ask some of the other guys who are now on AEW to come on the show. And I think there's a lot more to this story than what we are hearing at this current moment.
Now, do you want to hear something about this that makes it a little bit, you know, shady?
I'm all for shady.
So what is Woods making from Up, Down, Down? In an update to their original report, Fightful Select says little to nothing. Whatever money he does see from both Up, Down, Down and his new gig as a host on the rebooted G4 television channel are set to be applied toward the downside guarantee on his contracts. And for those of you who don't know what that means, this is the amount that a company is obligated to pay talent regardless of how variables such as gate/pay-per-view revenues or merchandise sales play out over the term of the deal. So he doesn't get the money up front. He gets the money back end, which
is kind of confirmation of what I was suspecting, was that WWE takes most of this money and then just returns nothing for him for it.
Or they return it later after they build up interest.
Maybe. But who knows whether the money that they get versus the money they give him is the same number, which I almost guarantee you it's not.
Now, there's said to be no heat on Woods, evident by the fact that currently he is the King of the Ring and is feuding with Roman Reigns.
Oddly enough.
But it's weird, and it's also another challenge to the independent contractor status of WWE.
Yep. But which they always seem to evade, especially when these things come up. And I don't know how they do. I don't know how they don't get hit with this when more of these controversies pop up, because it seems like once a year this question comes into the fold.
I think it's because not enough people that are actually in power outside of wrestling care about what's going on in wrestling. Well, like, remember last year when Andrew Yang got really upset about Zelina Vega getting fired and the calls for a union, and look where that went.
Yeah, they paid the shit out of Zelina Vega. They gave her so much goddamn money after they released her that she shut the hell up about it.
And Andrew Yang has since shut up about it because he's not a powerful enough person to actually bring eyeballs to this issue. And I think this is going to continue to go on if people outside of wrestling don't care about what's going on within wrestling.
Well, and I'm also going to add this kind of on top of this, because, and I know that this isn't quite, because I completely agree with you, Sky. I think if there was more of an outside investigation into these things, especially you would consider, considering the Dark Side of the Rings that keep coming out, that just more and more indictments on Vince McMahon, except for that steroid trial one. But here's my, I don't even want to call it controversial because it's really not. It is also the responsibility of the talent, if they are truly upset about their independent contractor status, to do something about it. And unfortunately, enough people who have these issues, who have had any sort of actual realistic standing in WWE, either don't have the balls or are far too comfortable to actually rock the boat.
Exactly. It would take, and the problem is that even if you had someone big step up, it's not like anyone that's big is going to step up and, do something about it. Like, the last time they had a chance to do it was with John Cena because he was a big mainstream star. And if he rocked, and there were arguments during the time when John Cena was around and he was a big star, that if everyone got together, they could force WWE's hand. But John didn't want to do it.
Which reminds me a lot of when Jesse the Body wanted to unionize and Hogan ratted him out to Vince, and within 6 months, Ventura was on WCW.
Exactly. Like, the poster boys are not going to be the people that are going to rock the boat. You think guys like John Cena or someone like Hulk Hogan or even Roman Reigns are going to rock the boat?
No, absolutely not. Because why would they? They're making millions a year. They're not going to want to change that, especially when that's the way the pay structure's set up. And I'm not saying, right, I'm not ignorant enough to say that everybody should be paid the same in pro wrestling. No, obviously not. That's not what I'm getting at. But there's got to be some sort of reckoning at some point with WWE and these contracts. Why not a single lawyer is looking into these contracts or whatever it is that they put up, because they're still, if they're independent contractors, that means they can leave and go work for somebody else at any time they want. But that's not the way that these contracts are structured.
In fact, let me give you another addendum to this. Dave Meltzer on the Wrestling Observer Radio indicated that every wrestler in WWE is underpaid because only 8% of WWE's total revenue is paid to the wrestlers. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar are the only wrestlers making $5 million per year, and a couple others make north of $3 million per year, but the majority are making less. And Vince McMahon personally thinks many wrestlers are overpaid.
Yeah, which is why I call bullshit on the budget cuts argument, considering the record profits across the board. And you're telling me that the place that the place that they're thinning out when it comes to money is the talent? I don't think so. You've got a thin-ass roster that's full of a jillion people, so I'm not saying you shouldn't release talent that you're not using, right? Like, neither of us even knew Harry Smith was employed there.
It's not even that. It's just the fact that every time this happens, John Laurinaitis, who is the favorite yes man of Vince McMahon for all these types of things, keeps using budget cuts as the reason why WWE wrestlers are released. You just said it. Dave Meltzer just said it, that only 8% of the company's revenue goes towards wrestler salaries.
Yeah. So there's really no argument there that they can make that would actually properly justify the fact that that budget cuts are what it really is. It's just the fact that they don't want to bother with anyone other than the few people that they do. And even with the few people that they do, that's what's so baffling. Because the people they do pay well, they can't even get over properly.
And when they do get over properly, they get ruined.
They get buried. Yeah. And it's just sad. It's sad because this is why, and kind of the same deal, kind of like what you were saying, which is why anytime I watch a WWE show, knowing that that's what they're going to do, knowing that anybody could be gone at any given moment just because they feel like their profits are thinning, even though they're clearly not, any WWE show I watch of Vince McMahon's, he's not getting any credit from me. The talent will get credit for me for knocking whatever rhetorically garbage product WWE is trying to hoist off on the public. The talent that make that good get the credit from me. But Vince McMahon will get no credit from me, even if he got a show that was better than any show he had put on before. It's not because of him. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about here. You still there, Sky? We might have lost Sky. He might have disappeared. His headphones might have died. I don't know what has happened. The world is strange and I'm scared. Well, I'm not really scared. I'm actually feeling quite good about myself. But Sky, whenever you want to
Can you hear me?
Yeah, oh, there you are. Hello. Welcome back.
I disappeared. My bad.
It's okay. Vince McMahon tried to kill him, but Skyler was able to break free and come back to the podcast.
Budget cuts were the reason, apparently. That's right. we had to cut out 20 seconds of audio. It's
right.
difficult. We barely make any money as is. We're a multi-billion-dollar company, but we barely make any money.
That's right. Record profits, but we're cutting Sky out for like half-second chunks.
Because they can't afford me. Anyways, we're going to move on to the juiciest news of the day. One, Becky Lynch.
Yes. Now, I have not seen these comments, but I'm very interested to hear what they are.
Well, they are from an interview with Sports Illustrated, the magazine of SportsCenter, and Disney affiliates, hashtag Mousy Man.
Mm-hmm.
So this is in talks about the segment that happened a couple weeks ago with Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch's relationship with Charlotte Flair.
Yes.
So, quote from Becky Lynch: "We don't talk anymore. We don't talk. So all I say is the locker room needs a hero sometimes, and sometimes somebody's got to be a hero. I'm all right being that hero. That's what I'll say on that matter."
Please tell me there's more to this quote.
Well, there's more to the interview.
Okay, please continue. I will save my thoughts for the end.
When asked if she trusts Flair, Lynch responds with a one-word answer: no. Lynch goes on to explain that the wrestling business is built on trust, and things are much more different than much more difficult when the trust is gone. Quote: "When you've got two people that are wanting to work together to make magic, then you make magic. Sometimes when there's hostility, when you can't trust that person, then you never know what's going to happen. You always have to be on guard. It's like a game of chess. You have to be thinking 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps ahead. What are they going to do? How am I going to handle it? If they do this, if they do that, whatever." The man does admit that the situation adds a layer of interest to their upcoming match November 21st at Survivor Series, Brooklyn, New York. But there's intrigue there too, because we never know, was this meant to happen? Was that not meant to happen? What's going to go down? There's interest in both ways. One way, it's the beautiful, pure art of pro wrestling. The other way is a bit of a shit show. So we'll see what happens.
Does Becky even recognize that she sounded so much like Charlotte Flair in that interview?
It's uncanny.
It reeks of Charlotte Flair. And we touched on this when we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. We said that the two biggest female egos in that company were Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. So it's no wonder that these two are button heads at this point. Because they're the same damn person.
It's not just that they're butting heads. It's the fact that they have almost the exact same personality. Like, does Becky recognize that she's no longer the beloved underdog?
She's not the hero she thinks she is, Tony Khan.
No, part of it could be that the locker room does feel that way about Charlotte. I mean, I would feel that way about Charlotte.
At this stage.
But it's just like, don't delude yourself into thinking that you're a great person, Becky, just because you are not Charlotte Flair. Because you have been guilty of a lot of things, such as holding women back, specifically Shayna Baszler.
Yeah, well, and then she holds Shayna Baszler back and then gets pregnant and leaves and hands the title to Asuka. Never forget that.
Now, part of that, I'm sure it's not actually Becky's decision to, have a baby.
Well, it may have, it may not have. These things sometimes happen by accident. These things sometimes happen on purpose. Who knows?
And if I do remember at the time, Becky did want to drop the title to Shayna. It's just that, Vince McMahon.
Right. You gotta... Yeah. As much as I don't want to give him credit, sometimes when it comes to this kind of stuff,
But that's the thing, though, is that... Is Charlotte the hero of the story? Is Becky the hero of the story? Is anyone the hero of the story?
I don't think so. I don't think there is a hero to this story. I think we've got two... I don't think that anyone's a villain either. I think you've just got two very egocentric women trying to prove that the other is not... Well, actually, it's just Becky. Becky's the only one trying to prove to people that she's not the egocentric woman that Charlotte is. Charlotte's like, yeah, I'm egocentric. I'm Charlotte fucking Flair. I don't give a damn. But which I honestly kind of respect. The fact that she just owns it. But the fact that Becky is out here trying to be like, nah, I'm a hero of the locker room. It's a bad look, Becky, and it doesn't make you look any better than Charlotte.
it makes it look worse because at least with Charlotte Flair, we can recognize that, hey, she's a Flair. They're cocky. They're arrogant. It's what Flairs do. Obviously, what Rick did.
Yep.
So even though Charlotte is his daughter, and we've made fun of the fact that WWE reminds us that fact
Constantly.
but at least it's part of her. Like, it's not, she's not denying it.
Right.
Becky is trying to portray herself as the good person in this story. I'm the considerate person. I'm the one that will be different because I'm the one that cares.
Yeah. You know who I feel bad for in this whole situation? Bianca Belair.
Exactly.
Because she just got thrown to the curb and spit out like yesterday's garbage and picked up like tomorrow's recycling. It's just...
Do you know who became the number one contender?
I forget.
Liv Morgan.
Oh, great. Cool. I could not care at all about Liv Morgan. And my blood is boiling. Because of anyone who did not deserve the way that all went down, it's Bianca Belair. This reminds me of Kofi Kingston's WWE title reign in a nutshell. Because Bianca Belair faced a bunch of nobodies leading up to her match with Becky.
Hold on. Let's not even get into that, okay? Bianca faced against Bayley multiple times.
Yeah, but not with the title.
Yes, with the title.
Because Bayley's been gone for months. Because she got injured.
Yes, but, hold on. Are you talking about...
I'm talking about Bianca Belair's title reign that started after she beat Sasha Banks.
She beat Bayley.
Okay, she did have a couple matches with Bayley, but then the quality of her competitors got worse, and then all of a sudden, Becky comes in 5 seconds later with a garbage rock bottom that I refuse to call what WWE calls it. And then she just gets tossed aside, just like Kofi did, and is expected to act like nothing's wrong and that none of that was a problem.
No, it's not just that. They're expecting her to smile about it.
Yeah, the way that Kofi did. I don't know what, and this is the thing that bothers me the most about this whole situation, because it almost seems like with Kofi's title reign and with Bianca's title reign, but with the exception of Bobby's title reign, because his was well.
You can throw in Bobby too.
You can throw in Bobby too, but it kind of seems like all of these people with a certain similar characteristic are given the chance to run with something that they really should have, and then they're capped off at the knees, almost like, hey, look, you did your singing and dancing, now sit down.
I'm curious about what they're going to do with Big E. They've been good so far, but it's very early in his title reign.
I'm not enthusiastic.
Right, and I mean, if you're talking about the person who sings and dances, Big E's the one that does that the most.
Yeah. But it's I fear for how they're going to end his title reign. Genuinely. Because it's going to feel like more like, listen, we accommodated you to make ourselves look better, really. That's what most of it is, most of the time, by WWE.
Well, thank you for your service. You did a great job as champion. Now shut the fuck up, and we're not going to let you do anything else.
Yep. So there you go. We got our progression. We got our progressiveness out of here, so now we don't have anything else to do with you.
Exactly.
And this is unfortunately not very outside the realm of WWE's history, because it's not just people like Kofi and Bobby Lashley and Bianca Belair and Big E who have suffered this kind of accommodation syndrome.
Oh, no. It's not even just a certain type of person. It's an entire gender.
Yeah, and which leads us to our topic of this week. And 43 minutes in, we're getting to our topic this week. And our topic is with the women's division of WWE. You've heard us talk about it almost every WWE pay-per-view, how much they don't care, or they have not paid any attention, or, if I'm going to take a lighter tone, haven't given it the respect it deserves. And it turns out that throughout much of its history, the WWE Women's Division and Women's Championship have gone through the ringer when it comes to lack of respect.
And it's one of those things where women have a place in wrestling. If you give women an opportunity, they're going to shine. But WWE proceeds to just give them scraps.
Yeah. Now, we're going to set the clock way back. So what I'm going to do with this segment, Skylar, is I'm going to give you a couple pieces of information about the women's division. We're just going to kind of progress through the years until we get to now, which is a lot of what a lot of you have already heard from us and see from us. But I'm going to give you a few little fun titty bits to mull over and get your reactions for. Are you ready?
Yes, and I'm going to defer to you because your knowledge of wrestling in the past is better than mine. I will allow you to lead.
All right. I appreciate
as
that.
the leading man of this play.
Yes, for sure. So now, unfortunately, we have to talk about Moolah because she is she's very much ingrained in WWE's women's division. But I want to read this paragraph, and I will full-fledged admit I'm getting this from the Women's Championships wiki, but this is very interesting information. So, Moolah, in 1956, had won the NWA Women's Championship working from the Northeastern company Capital Wrestling Corporation. Capital Wrestling Corporation, in 1963, is seceded from the NWA and became the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, which was Vincent J's promotion. When that happened... Vince Sr. Yes, Vince Sr. And in that time, they quietly rejoined the NWA in 71, and Moolah actually bought the right to that championship. So it was exclusively in her name, so it wasn't in WWE's name.
Okay.
Somehow I'm not surprised.
I mean, this is the fabulous Moolah we're talking about.
Yeah. And what's crazy about this is instead of her reign beginning in 1984, when they bought the rights back, when they became just the WWF in 1984, and when they did, she was recognized as the first WWF Women's Champion. But the ridiculousness of this part is, because it was her claim and because of the lineage that WWF had involved at the time, even though she was not technically WWF Women's Champion, they recognized that reign starting in 1956, which is why Moolah has that 28-year title reign in WWE's records.
Now, here's the thing. That 28-year title reign, did she even defend the title?
Occasionally. Probably went territory to territory, but, you also know that Moolah was training a lot of these women and, all the stories that you've got out of Moolah's dungeon and, one of their girls and all that jazz. And so, really, and it was not so much that Moolah didn't defend it. It's just the fact that there was no interest in changing it because Moolah owned the rights to the belt. You think she was going to give that right to somebody else?
And no, obviously not. But
Yeah.
It's just one of those interesting things that the fabulous Moolah is one of the most interesting characters in wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that mildly.
Worth an episode on her own.
Has she been on Dark Side?
No, but I wouldn't be surprised. Well, she has in small bits, when they talked about, who was it that they had? It was partially with Moolah, but I can't remember the full context of that. It might have been like Rockin' Robin and Alundra Blayze and Wendy Richter was on it. Because there was discussion.
The Wendy Richter episode. Oh.
Yes.
Honestly, they should do an episode on the fabulous Moolah because she is one of the most shady women in wrestling.
Yeah.
And we're only scratching the surface. We could dedicate an entire episode on fabulous Moolah because...
And maybe one day we will. But it is...
Maybe one day we will, but there's a lot to go into that part.
So, moving along, then we get the first inactive women's championship run because now in the 80s, of course, there was that screwing over of Wendy Richter a la Fabulous Moolah in the actual shoot Black Spider or Spider Lady matchup, which was an actual shoot pin where Moolah was screwed over Richter to gain the belt again. And Then in 1990, the Women's Championship was declared inactive after Rockin' Robin, the sister of Jake the Snake, vacated the belt once she left the promotion. And WWE, in the ultimate respect to women, decided that it didn't need a women's champion for 3 years.
Well, the other thing, too, you have to understand that women's wrestling at this time, from the 50s to the 70s and 80s, it was treated as a sideshow. It wasn't treated seriously.
Right.
You could have women's matches, but they were looked on as the eye candy. They weren't really seen as actual athletic competitors.
Well, I would argue that Moolah was never really eye candy, but you're not wrong. But it wasn't so much like, it wasn't going to be the eye candy that it would eventually be. It's just that the matches were never long and they never had a lot of time. But that's not to say that the women couldn't work. It's just that they were just another attraction, like the midgets or the bull or the wrestling the bear. They were just another niche side attraction to the main attraction.
Right. And the other thing, too, with women's wrestling is that it's often been treated as the freak show. And women in wrestling, basically, your gig was to be a manager, or a valet.
Yeah. Especially in the late 80s.
Especially some of the famous ones, like Missy Hyatt.
Miss Elizabeth. Yep.
There's a couple other ones.
Sensational Sherry, who is also a good worker.
Sensational Sherry. There's a couple more of them.
There's a lot of them. There's a lot of women you could name coming out of the 80s. I mean, Luna was a wrestler, but she ended up becoming something of a valet, considering we're talking about WWE and their poor treatment of women.
Oh, yes.
And so, which leads us to kind of later on, because then December 93, Alundra Blayze wins a tournament for the Vacant Women's Championship. And then, for 2 years, it basically there was only one match that ever took place in those 2 years. Alundra Blayze versus Bull Nakano. That's it. And they wrestled easily 100 times. I mean, they wrestled everywhere. And then Alundra Blayze left, and we get that moment in WCW.
The famous one of Alundra Blayze taking the Women's Championship and dropping it in the trash.
Now, is it not, Skylar, an indictment on WWE's continued attitude? Now, granted, they were struggling across the board from 93 to 95, was WWE, for a number of reasons. But is it not an indictment that they pretty much only had a women's division surrounding 2 women?
That's not a division. That's a single matchup.
Yeah, that they would not stop doing. And so then, in 95, when Alundra throws the belt in the trash, we don't get it revived until September 1998. Another 3 years passes before the Women's Championship is reactivated. Would you like to know the match that reactivated that belt?
Okay, I have an idea of the match. I'm not going to say it because I don't want it to be what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
It is Jackie Moore, or Jacqueline, defeated Sable.
Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
What did you have in your head?
Mae Young versus Fabulous Moolah.
No, it was not. Although that was a match in the Attitude Era. And then we have to talk about Attitude Era women's quote-unquote wrestling. There was no wrestling about it. It was ass and titties. That was it.
It was the bikini contest.
It was the bikini contest. It was the 4 women just pushing each other in the pool until one escaped, I think, was how that match was won. I don't remember. I genuinely don't. But it was obviously not treated anywhere near the level where the wrestling with the women came second to the bodies of the women.
And there was one exception during the Attitude Era. One exception.
Ivory?
China.
Oh, and well, however, come 2000, 2001, was it really that much different?
No, but it's like women's wrestling, again, was either the sex show or the freak show with China, who famously became the Intercontinental Champion.
Right, which is which had no problem with that because she looked big enough to compete with the guys. And I know that there's a lot of issues surrounding intergender matches, but if there's any one person who had the build to make it look like it was going to work, it was Chyna, until Vince forced her to get her tits done.
It's just too bad that Chyna was not a good wrestler.
Not really, no. You know, not really. And I give all the credit in the world to Jeff Jarrett for putting up with all of that and for leading Chyna into some halfway decent matches. And then, moreover, also putting Chyna over with everything, including the kitchen sink, after he held Vince McMahon up for money.
and ironically, threatened to do the same thing that Alundra Blayze did with the Women's Championship with WCW.
Yep. And Vince gave him like $150,000, and then he dropped the belt to Chyna. And that was the last we saw of Jeff Jarrett in WWE for like 15 to 18 years.
Exactly. But then, that's the other thing, too, is that this is what it took to get Chyna to become a champion, is Vince McMahon doing a payoff.
And to make any woman in WWE feel anywhere remotely as important as anyone else they had on that show. Because tell me, can you remember a single Attitude Era Women's Championship match?
A good one?
Yeah. Even a decent one. Give me a decent Women's Championship match.
No.
Yeah, exactly. Because they went.
That's and the sad part is that there were some decent women's champions during this time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jackie knew how to work. Jackie Moore had some great matches when finally women's wrestling started being treated a little bit more respectfully come the early 2000s.
Yes, but again, this was still the time of Sable and Deborah and all these other useless people.
Right. Well, in the late 90s. But then comes 2002. Then comes the development of people like Trish Stratus and Lita. And some more of these women who are getting a little bit more involved. You know, Lita was very, very big in the Hardys' success as far as her involvement in one of the TLC matches. She was treated with respect with the exception of that weird Asa Rios phase.
Right, like Lita was the high-flying, dangerous punk girl. She was popular with people. Trish Stratus was the sex symbol, and yes, I know sex symbol and WWE women,
But she put the work in.
She put the work in and legitimately became really good. You have to talk about women like Jazz, like Molly Holly, like Victoria, Gail Kim.
Yeah, all of a sudden they actually started to care. And then it was, you know, not at the level where they were going to be treated on par with the guys. And you and I have had this discussion that if you're not going to do it right, don't do it at all. So having a match, one quality match on the show was better than having 3 garbage matches. But they were starting to develop some quality women's matches.
And it wasn't just that they were starting to develop quality women's matches, but they were starting to develop women wrestlers who could conceivably do the same thing that guys did.
And
during this period, during this period, one of the most famous is the first time a women's match ever main evented Raw, Trish Stratus versus Lita.
I feel so bad for those two that Lita nearly killed herself during that match.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, that was brutal. I felt so bad because, I mean, the match, it was over. The people were cheering it. They were
and Lita almost died.
Yeah, and Lita nearly died. Not as much as she nearly killed I forget who during that Women's Royal Rumble, which we'll get to in a minute. But in any case, then we start getting a little bit more respect. And actually, this was a time when I started really enjoying women's wrestling. The feud with Trish Stratus and Molly Holly at the end of 2002. Loved that. You know, even
if it was strange, the Trish Stratus Mickie James feud.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a little weird, but Mickie, same thing. She knew how to work. You know, she got better with each passing day. She definitely put the work in. They were trying to get women who actually could wrestle. And then Jackie Gata.
You had to ruin it.
I did. Because it wasn't perfect, right? Because for every Trish Stratus, you had a Jackie Gata. Or you had what was the name of that woman who was with the Bashams in 2002? I can't remember her name now. And it's going to bother me until I can come up with it. She was gigantic. She was like 6'2" or 6'3". And she was just...
Chris Jericho?
No, she wasn't fat. She was just large and built.
I'm sorry, I had to get a Chris Jericho is so fat.
It's fair. It's fair. Definitely fair. God, it's gonna bother me, but we'll move on from that. That shows how important she really was. Shaniqua, yes, thank you. I was like, I couldn't come up with the name.
Or AKA Linda Miles.
Linda Miles, thank you very much. That was yes.
Oh,
she was there. She had an impressive physique, but so I guess she fit WWE's prototype perfectly. Great body, couldn't work a lick.
Couldn't work a lick.
That's what she did. That's what it was. So, it wasn't perfect, but there was more of a concerted effort.
Right, and even into the late 2000s and the early teens, you had some decent women's wrestlers. You had Mickie James, Beth Phoenix, Melina, Michelle McCool, Beth Phoenix.
But at the same time, then we get the Divas era and the Divas Championship, and things then start changing a little bit with what WWE prioritizes as their women's wrestlers. Because if you recall, even though they had Natalya Neidhart, who was not nearly as oversaturated as she is now, and they had Beth Phoenix, and they had all these people, it's not like they got any real quality airtime.
This was the Divas era is what, 08 to 2016.
Yep.
That was how long the Divas Championship was around, but it was the Unified Divas Championship from 2010. So really, from 2010 to 2016, during this 6-year run, women's wrestling barely got 5 minutes on TV.
It took a nosedive. Beth Phoenix's biggest contribution during this time was kissing Khali over the top rope to eliminate him.
Right. And it especially from 2010 to 2013, I know I've named it the Kelly era, but that's the reason why, is because Kelly kind of signifies what women's wrestling had become.
Yeah.
Beautiful, athletic females that don't know anything about wrestling and just,
Or big athletic women who can't work a lick, a la Tamina.
Right. And then in the 2013, there started to be a little bit of a change with Caitlyn and AJ Lee, and then the introduction of Paige.
Yep. But it was really NXT that propelled that. It took Triple H cultivating women's talent and creating proper women's wrestlers in order for that to even become something that was facilitated. And even then, WWE felt like it was pulling teeth to make it happen.
Right, but there was starting to be the push and the appetite for really good women's wrestlers, and WWE at the time just happened to have a specific 4 female wrestlers who stood out among the rest.
Yep. And those 4 and really, it was one match of those 4 women that truly became to redefine women's wrestling and what WWE perceived it as. Can you guess what match I'm referring to?
Is it TakeOver Brooklyn?
Yes.
And is it Bayley versus Sasha?
Yes. Because that match got the most buzz out of any women's match, arguably in WWE history.
And that match, I actually, to be honest, I kind of forget about that match. It's been so long. You know what? We need to make a match of the week.
We should watch that again, because honestly, I think we'd both be pretty happy with how it went. Because I remember really, really liking it then.
And even, unfortunately, the only problem with that match is that the 4 horsewomen did the curtain call.
Well, but it was also, at least at that point, kayfabe was pretty much already destroyed, so, like, who cared? There was a lot less egregious than the original.
Right, and then there's also the match that was arguably even better at TakeOver Respect, Bayley and Banks, the 30-minute Iron Man match.
Yep. Yeah, that was also good. But again, because they were treated with respect, they were treated with the same level, they were given 15 to 20 minutes to go out there and do what they knew they could do. Nobody was giving women's matches that much time.
No, not at all.
And to be fair, 9/10 of the women didn't deserve matches that long, but the fact that they finally had people who could do that and should do that, you felt like a page was turning for WWE.
Right, and then 2016, the Divas title is mercifully killed.
After Stephanie McMahon invents women.
After Stephanie McMahon invents women. And then the Women's Championship comes around, but really from about 2016 to 2020, it is the Four Horsewomen era.
And it really hasn't stopped being the Four Horsewomen era. There have been a couple champions here and there that have come and done things, but realistically, it's really just been those four because that's the only four that they've decided to promote.
And granted, at least it's four women and not just two. Like, it's not just the John Cena and Randy Orton going head-to-head over and over and over and over again.
Yep. But that's not to say that we haven't seen a lot of these women wrestle each other a lot. I mean, we're getting Becky and Charlotte again. How many times have we seen these two face each other?
A lot.
A lot. And it's like, and how many times did we have to suffer through the Boss and Hug connection? A lot. It's just oversaturation. And then they suffer the same problem that they do with the men, where they just can't make new stars once they've hit the ones that they like.
Exactly. Like, for example, the Women's Tag Team Championships, right?
Are those still around, or is that still a thing?
It's still a
thing. Does Nikki Ash and Rhea Ripley still... Oh!
By the way, there are no other official WWE tag teams of women in wrestling.
Yeah. You wonder why.
It's a one tag team division.
Yeah. And it's no surprise. Because this is what they've tried to do. And again, this is kind of the thing with them, because they push women's wrestling like they're so progressive and they're so ahead of everybody else. But then the matches that they have, like the women's, those big multi-women matches that always suck. They always suck. And then they have a couple matches that are really good, and then they have these garbage finishes. They feign respect for these women, but it's hard to argue that there's definitely more than there was before, by far. By far. But they're still not treating these women's divisions with the quality that they should have.
Case in point, look at the WWE Women's divisions right now on Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah.
Besides the Horsewomen and Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair, can you name a women's wrestler?
Well, Liv Morgan, we already discussed her because she's being...
Okay.
Mella used to be money, but the only reason she was money is because of James Ellsworth. That sink in for a second.
Right. Zelina Vega, who's overpaid.
Asuka, who was great at first and then ended up being one of the bane of our existence.
Well, specifically yours, because you were adamant about your dislike for Asuka and her gimmick.
And now, when was the last time she was on television?
She has had surgery to repair some injuries.
Yes.
And Asuka is getting long in the tooth. I don't know if she's going to be wrestling that much longer.
Yeah, she's got to be nearing her 40s now. At least.
Yeah, she is 40 years old. She just turned 40 in September.
Oh, happy belated birthday, Asuka.
We wish that your gimmick was not Screaming Banshee Woman.
Yes.
And think about this too. Women like Asuka were treated as dominant, indestructible, unbeatable, and then they took her gimmick and ruined it.
Shayna Baszler had a 416 combined NXT Women's Championship title reign days, and then she debuts by biting Becky's neck and bleeding from the mouth. This is what they do to these women. They over-gimmick them, and they make them so unimportant. And, of course, they do that to the men, too. A la Karrion Kross and Bearcat Keith Lee and all that jazz. But there's an inherent, sexism with the women. Yeah.
Because before, during the Divas era, the gimmick was, okay, you're either going to be a catty woman or you're going to be a sex symbol. Go out there.
Yeah. And that was pretty much it. That was all you had. And,
and the matches, as for the matches, well, ready for the match of the week?
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that in a second. I have a few more titty bits for you, Skylar. You ready to hear some numbers?
Sure.
Because I've got some numbers, and then we'll move on. I guess the final thought of this whole point of this, before I get to these numbers, is that as much as WWE would like to tell you they care about their women's division, and they have come a long way from where they used to, this is not a company with the track record that says they're going to get any better down the road.
It feels like their women's division is kind of peaked, huh?
Yeah. It really does. It really does. And I wouldn't be surprised if in like 5 or 6 years' time, especially if Laurinaitis is still around, considering the Eva Marie rehire, I wouldn't be surprised if we downgrade back to eye candy wrestlers.
Especially once they run off the horsewomen.
That's right, which it's going to start with Charlotte, and then we'll see how far it goes. Now, fun facts. Who do you think has the most WWE Women's Championship title reigns?
It's Charlotte.
No.
Huh?
It is specifically purely the Women's Championship.
Oh, okay.
That belongs to Trish Stratus.
Yeah, it has to be Trish Stratus.
With 7 reigns. Charlotte Flair has 6 Raw Women's Championships, 6 SmackDown Women's Championships, and 2 NXT Women's Championships.
I like that the numbers are very even.
That's right. Well, then because they're trying, I guess. And it's I'm sorry, and I forgot to add one because she did win the Divas Championship once.
But that was converted to the Raw Women's Championship.
That's right. And she is the only woman to have held the NXT Women's Championship, the Divas Championship, and the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. Faint praise, obviously. Who had the most Divas Championship title reigns?
Is it Michelle McCool?
No. Because she only had, I think, 2.
Okay.
It is a tie between AJ Lee and Eve Torres.
Oh, yeah.
Who Eve Torres, I don't even remember what she looks like. Let alone what
she was a brunette. Did. Oh my god, the Zack Ryder girlfriend.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's.
I remember the time she kissed John Cena.
Yes, I do, and that was so oh god.
Now do you know who she looks like?
Yep. Now I remember. Next fun little tidbit. The Fabulous Moolah, we mentioned that her recognition of how many days that she's had this belt are very long, 28 years. Would you like to know how many days she is recorded having held the Women's Championship?
How many days?
3,651 days as Women's Champion.
God.
The next closest in women's title reigns, with no matter what WWE title it is, belongs to, I'll let you guess this one. It belongs to an NXT UK Women's Champion.
Is it the Final Boss? No, it has to be Toni Storm.
It is not Toni Storm. It is Kaylee Ray.
Oh, yeah.
With 649 days.
Oh, I forgot. Kaylee Ray had that really long title reign.
That's right. And then...
what is she doing now?
I have no idea what she's doing now. And you know what makes me laugh about this? It mentions here that they recognize the title reign is ending June 10th, 2021, although the match aired on a tape delay and the actual date when the show took place is currently unknown.
So wait, the match hasn't aired?
Apparently, we never saw it happen. Apparently.
What the fuck?
Yeah, this is it's a little ridiculous. And
oh yeah, Kaylee Ray is currently wrestling on NXT. That's interesting.
NXT 2.0, of course.
Ugh.
And yeah, and then the next ones are Asuka's title reign at 510, Rockin' Robin, who held the Women's Championship for 502 days until she left the company in 1990. And then Trish Stratus's combined 6 reigns at a total of 448 days round out the top 5.
Surprised that Charlotte's not in there. I know she had a 400-day title reign in there somewhere.
Well, she actually doesn't even make the top 10.
What?
The final 5 are because she, like Rick, wanted to drop it more than she, I guess, wanted to drop it more than she didn't, or was told to.
I mean, Charlotte Flair loves dropping titles.
Yeah. So the next 5 are Sensational Sherry at 441. Shayna Baszler's 2 combined NXT Championship reigns with 416. It is a tie for 8th with Bayley and Moolah for her final 3 title reigns with Fabulous Moolah at 380. And then Becky Lynch with her 373-day title reign, although they recognize it as 398 due to, once again, a tape delay.
Weird.
Very weird. And and just a little fun, because they actually have tag team championship reigns here. Would you like to know the longest reigning women's tag team champions?
Does it have to be the Iconics?
It is not the Iconics, although they are 8th at 120.
Okay, it's not Bayley and Sasha. They lost it very quickly.
No, it's nobody you will know.
Is it? It's not Natalya and Tamina, is it?
No. It is the Glamour Girls, Judy Martin and Leilani Kai, 2 of Moolah's girls in the 80s. And this
okay. They're counting the old titles too, damn it.
They're counting all. That was the WWF Women's Tag Team Championship. And actually, the Glamour Girls are also on here as number 3 with a 251-day title reign that they also had. And they're the only team to have held the titles 3 times.
Who's the longest reigning modern champions?
The longest reigning modern champion of tag teams belongs to the Kabuki Warriors.
Oh, damn it.
Asuka and Kairi Sane with their one reign of 171 or 172, because the event that they lost the title was taped across 2 days and is currently not known which date they lost the belts. Because they just care so much for the semantics.
Folks, this is what you should know about title reigns on tape delays. Sometimes they get very fun and weird.
Well, this is definitely it. So the women's championships of WWE and the women's division is a rich tapestry, and it's a tapestry that is definitely interwoven with a bunch of very peculiar rounded edges and pointy parts. But the only way that we're really going to accurately know how well these women actually were able to work is to watch a match. And that's just what we did. Roll that intro.
What time is it?
It's the fight, it's the brawl, it's the match of the week. It's tonight, watch along with the son of a beat. It's one fall, the down for the 1, 2, and 3. So don't stall, hang on to the edge of your seat. We got a punch and a flip and a powerbomb too. All the moves and the stars are all under review. See the baby face cheered and the heels get heat. This is wrestling at its peak. It's the match of the week. That's right, folks. It is our match of the week. This week, we have a very interesting matchup. Night of Champions 2009, Mickie James versus Maryse for the Divas Championship. What did you think about this match, Sky?
This was a typical Divas era's championship match.
Well, let's put some context into this Sunday, shall we?
Please do.
This match was after a triple threat match between John Cena, Randy Orton, and Triple H for the WWE Championship that went 25 minutes.
What?
Is it any surprise?
No wonder the crowd was tired.
Is it any surprise that this match got no reaction and got boring chants throughout?
I mean, they were in the death slots.
Yeah. And this was 2 matches before the main event, because they had a Rey Mysterio Intercontinental Championship match after this, and then the main event, which was Jeff Hardy versus CM Punk.
Oh, God, is that the one that Jeff Hardy beat CM Punk?
Yes.
Right after CM Punk did the walkout the previous pay-per-view.
Correct.
Oh, no wonder why the crowd was dead. They could not care about this match.
Yeah. This match was dead on arrival. And I feel bad because Mickie I've always liked Mickie James. I always will like Mickie James. And Maryse, I always thought that she was better than people gave her credit for. And there's definitely elements to that here, but there just wasn't enough time. And I don't really know that these two had that great of a chemistry on this night.
No, the problem with this match is that it was really awkward.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, like, Maryse's healing was to get in between the ropes or to continuously, like, don't touch me or anything like that.
Right. I mean, she did do something, she did slap back, the back of Mickey's head, to kind of get her up. And, they did the heat spot where Mickie crashed and burned, and then Maryse took advantage. She did that split leg chin lock, which I know is mostly just supposed to be sexy, but it also doesn't look like it does nearly as much damage as she thinks it does.
But that's the problem with what I call it the Divas era's matches, because the Diva era matches, the moves didn't look like they hurt. The punches, the striking, particularly Maryse's striking, was awful.
And she was also fairly green at this point, too. Because, I mean, she was only in OVW in, like, 2006, 2007, so she didn't really have that much experience heading into 08 and 09.
Like, when she was doing the mounted ground and pound to Mickie James, her punches were missing Mickey's head by inches.
By a lot. And then there was that Mickie coming off the top rope where she landed very awkwardly when Maryse ducked. And she, like, stood and then, like, took a bump, which is different than the rollout that I'm used to nowadays. But even still, it was just, this match was clunky.
Right. I think Mickie was trying to carry Maryse. It was just, Maryse was not good enough at this time to be able to kind of be carried.
Yeah, I mean, she had some good matches with McQueen. We'll talk about Maryse in a second as far as, like, the rest of her career goes. But I don't really think that Maryse was done a proper service by having her go up to the main roster so quickly. Gee, you wonder why.
Like, you can tell that this is the time when they really, really needed more. Like, she was a Divas Search contestant, which that should let you know how good this was.
Yeah.
And she was into development for a very short amount of time. She needed way more time to develop, but they just pushed her up, gave her matches. Like, Maryse is one of the poster child of the reason why WWE needed a better developmental system, which thankfully NXT became that, because FCW was not very good.
Yeah, and the thing is that Maryse could talk, right? She definitely could talk, but the whole premise of this match, before we get too much into Maryse, was that Maryse had just maced the shit out of Mickie the Raw before, where she just, like, took that mace and just sprayed the absolute teetotal shit out of her, like she was spray painting the side of a barn. Which wasn't even the finish of this match.
Like, they bring the mace up, like, Maryse grabs it from under the ring, and Mickie James is about to hit Maryse with it, and then the referee grabs it, and then they keep wrestling.
I thought that was going to be the end of the match. Right there, I was like, that would have made sense for that to be the end of the match. And because this was in a death slot, it probably should have.
Right, it should have been a whole thing of Maryse tries to grab the spray, and then the ref grabs it because Maryse can't do it, and then while his back is turned, Mickie James grabs another spray and sprays Maryse. Or finish 1, 2, 3.
Or Maryse tries to do something other shady to Mickie. Mickie counters, hits her Mick DDT, which looked very bad on this day, and get the cover and won the belt that way. And it would have been a 5-minute match, and nobody would have said anything about it, and we wouldn't have had to go through another 3 or 4 minutes of slow heat with no real comeback with a flat finish. Yeah, this match, there was definitely no expectations on it, but it still felt like it underwhelmed.
It did. It's just, ooh.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a tough spot to go out on. It really is, so I don't fault either of these women for not having the fans behind them, but there have got to be better Maryse matches than that one. I just can't find any.
I don't think... Maryse did not have a long career. I guess we can get into her career. I
Yeah,
guess.
let's move on to the spotlight with Maryse, because as you mentioned, Sky, she was a Divas Search contestant. She didn't win, but they were impressed enough with her to sign her, well, to actually just have her watch training, and then eventually she did actually come in
Before we go on, can we talk about the Divas Search for a second?
Yeah, the one where the Miz hosted?
That wasn't the Miz the host?
Yeah!
And that's how he met. Imagine meeting your wife like that.
I mean, I guess there's a lot of worse ways to meet your wife.
But Maryse was part of the 2006 version of it. The Divas Search is infamous for not producing any good wrestlers.
Layla wasn't terrible. She was the one who ended up winning that, but the first thing that they did with Layla in 2006, I don't know whether you remember this, SummerSlam, they had all the women say, "Welcome to the roster," and then they bent her over and exposed, like, her thonged butt and just smacked it. Like, "Welcome to the women's division." And that's how Layla was integrated into WWE. Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of adding more icing onto this cake that we've been building since the start of the show.
By the way, the runner-up was Jennifer England. Famously, her and Layla, well, she was the runner-up, Layla was the winner, and they ended the campaign by having them kiss in bikinis and then grope and French kiss each other.
WWE, nothing but respect for women's division.
Yeah, but Maryse was invited to watch the training with Brooke Adams, which is interesting.
Yeah, who wasn't too bad, but she was really Katie Forbes before Katie Forbes.
I like Miss Tessmacher.
Oh, I do too, but her whole gimmick was shaking her ass, which is what Katie Forbes does. But I will say, Brooke Adams is a lot more attractive than Katie Forbes.
Clearly.
Yes.
Anyways, Maryse gets the opportunity to work in OVW. Like, she signs in August 24th of 2007. And she mainly was managing a lot, which is,
Fine. Unsurprising, but fine.
But, like, she was wrestling... She started wrestling in 2008 March, so that's what, 6 months of training?
Yeah, maybe, yeah, pretty much. September, October, November, December, January, February, March. 7 months.
And August 24th, so that's not even a full month. It's like she barely had time to learn a hold.
Yeah. And then she got pushed way too early, like they do with a lot of these attractive women. She worked with Michelle McCool, who didn't know how to work. So, that was helpful to able to integrate her, but this is the disservice they do to these women. They bring her on the road for 300 days where they don't get to hone their craft in front of fewer people so they know what works and what doesn't.
Well, think about this. She was introduced in a swimsuit contest.
Shocking. Well, in all fairness, Maryse was, before she joined the Divas Search, she was a Canadian model.
That doesn't mean that she has to be degraded in this way. And speaking of degrading, we didn't talk about this in the match of the week. One of the reasons I hate the women's division or the Divas division at this time was fucking Jerry Lawler.
Oh, I couldn't even listen to the commentary. I just had it basically shut off.
Jerry Lawler
I didn't bother.
Was his absolute worst at this time. He was trying to recreate that Attitude Era Divas thing, or the Attitude Era swimsuit thing, and I just...
Yeah, but he was a lot older and a lot creepier about it.
Yes.
And it didn't go over as well as I think he thought it would.
Because the audience grew up. We don't need to see this shit.
Yeah, well, because if the fans recognized that WWE was not treating the women's division with respect, and then Jerry was just emphasizing that.
Oh, yeah.
And that also was, I think, part of the problem and why people didn't take it any seriously. And Maryse, she really is a poster child for the Divas era.
Right, like, she wasn't even around that long. She started in 2007, she left in 2010.
And, it's a little bit of a shame because
2011.
I think that if she had actually wanted to develop and learn more and work more, she could have actually refined what she had, because she did have elements that were good, right? She did have some healing. Like I said, she could talk. when she wanted to. It's just that they never wanted to refine her, and I don't think she ever wanted to refine herself.
But that's saying that without not knowing her personally. Like, we don't know whether or not she actually wanted to do it or not. It's just they never gave her the opportunity because they would have these multi-women matches, or they would have these dumb segments, or they would do something stupid like have her manage Ted DiBiase.
Oh, yeah.
I think Maryse is the case of a woman who maybe shouldn't have been a wrestler, but should have been a manager, because as a manager or valet, she was amazing.
Yeah.
She could get heat, especially with her husband.
Yeah. I mean, despite what we think, the last match Maryse ever wrestled, I would be happy not ever thinking about or talking about again. But we have to, because it was like 8 years after the fact.
But hold on 1 second. She comes back and she manages The Miz after retiring in 2011. She comes back in 2016. She was getting heat, especially because she was doing all the intros in French.
Yep. Yeah, and that was bothering her, and she...
It was helping to make The Miz's act more, heelish.
Well, especially because 2016 Miz was not great. With the exception of the Ziggler feud before that got completely destroyed. That was the last faint praise that The Miz had from 26. The Miz and Ziggler had after wrestling 1,000 times before that. That was one of the things.
The whole thing is that The Miz in 2016 SmackDown Live era, the Dolph Ziggler feud may have been maybe his best work in years.
Yeah.
And Maryse was part of his act enhancing his smarminess.
Absolutely.
Here I am with my beautiful wife kissing in front of you guys with the Intercontinental Championship, and you can't do anything about it.
Yep. Absolutely. It worked. It did work. Maryse, and I'm not taking anything away from Maryse's ability to manage and to talk. It's just that as a wrestler, it didn't quite pan out because she didn't get enough time to hone her craft.
I think Maryse is the cautionary tale of having a good developmental system.
Yeah.
Or even having a system of training. Like, she didn't get any time to develop, and what time she get developed, she didn't get that much opportunity to really practice with good people.
Yeah. Yeah, because 2008 OVW, before that relationship ended, was not good. Before they moved everything over to FCW and then basically destroyed Danny Davis's entire promotion.
Now, here's the thing. Who was running OVW at the time? Was it Dreamer?
I believe... I think Danny Davis was pushed off out at that point. I think it was Dreamer, and I think Heyman had a little bit to do with the booking.
Hold on. We need to look this up because OVW...
Well, OVW deserves its own episode as well.
Because we know that Jim Cornette parted in 2005. Of course, the Santino incident. Oh, Al Snow.
Well, okay, I can't get mad at Al Snow. I really like Al Snow. But I think a part of it is that I don't really blame Al Snow because I think that the talent there wasn't terrific enough to really give her experience that she needs either. And there wasn't anywhere near of the talent going down to OVW to help the way that they did during the Cornette era of OVW.
Right, because during that time, you would have guys like Chris Jericho showing up and helping to get stuff on. Steve Austin made a couple of appearances at OVW.
Yep, Kane was there. They brought a lot of names down to OVW to help build talent.
But then it was one of those things where they would just start fucking with the guys at OVW. For example, John Laurinaitis was the head of talent relations, and
Say no more.
And John Laurinaitis is one of the guys I blame for the Divas era because he's the one that were making all these hires based on models coming up.
Yeah.
Like, who's the hottest model that we can hire?
Eva Marie. And then again, twice.
Not once, but twice.
That's right. And so, Maryse, honestly, I've got nothing against Maryse, right? Obviously, she's there's definitely a lot of pros to what she brought to the table. And, prior to her, having many little mini Mizes and having their own reality show. What, do you like mini Mrs.? Mrs. Run Around?
It's almost as good as Mrs. Miz.
Yes. Yeah, yes. Which is, yeah, so that's where she is now. And obviously, you know, she had potential, and she definitely lived up to some of it, but there could have been more done with her.
Absolutely, and it's just one of those things where, like, if Maryse was given the opportunity, she could have been one of the best female heels because of her promo ability.
Yeah.
But the wrestling never came back.
Yeah, and it
never came up.
It's a shame, but I think she's doing pretty good for herself, as are we. And because we're doing pretty good for ourselves, we have got to take our first commercial break so we don't give you too much at once. Coming up next week, just a little point of skill. You know what? Because I have made it and it's only a 5-second intro, roll that announcements intro. Announcements? Nani? Okay, just a point of order as to what we're doing for the next couple of weeks. Because as we have just noticed, Full Gear is this Saturday. And
November 13th.
Yep. Which might be the exact same day this airs, depending on how this all goes around. And as a result, we are going to be recording and reviewing Full Gear next week. Although ACPW versus NWL was supposed to be on this third week of November. Fear not. We will still get to see and hear the magnificent event of the Wrestle Festival. We just got to wait one more week for it. So it's...
Well, hold on. There's an issue.
What's that?
Survivor Series for WWE is November 21st.
Yeah. Which is...
So are we pushing the Survivor Series review to the 5th week of November and we're just doing... You know what? Fuck it. I don't care about Survivor Series.
Well, I mean, I don't really care about Survivor Series either, but you know what? Let's pull up this calendar real quick. Because what we might do, now that I'm looking at this here, because it is... So next week is the Full Gear review. The 21st is Survivor Series. And then...
You know what we can do? We could do 2 shows a week.
I'm thinking that might be what we have to do. We might just pull a Thanksgiving double duty. So we're going to do this as best we can. We're going to watch Full Gear, we're going to watch Survivor Series, and then we're going to show them both how it's done.
Because we already know that they're not going to do either show.
Because we already know. But the only way you're going to know is doing what we told you to do within the first minute and a half of this program, which is to like, the share, the subscribe, to hit the bell button to all so you can get all of the content that we have got coming in store for you. And boy, there is a lot. Any last words you'd like to give to the people, Sky?
We should also mention, by the way, that Full Gear review and Survivor Series will probably be a 3-man booth with everyone's favorite emo edgelord, one Josh Again himself.
That's right. And Omega Elfberg is on standby already. But until that time, we have to take our first commercial break. Skylar, always a blast talking with you about women's division because it's always a roller coaster.
Is it not the gift that keeps on giving?
It's certainly continuing to give, but we'll see how much it gives in the next couple of weeks. Until then, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching, and we will be right back after this short commercial break.